So, colleagues, I rise to recognize my seatmate, district neighbor, and friend, Senator Nancy Skinner. I think that many of us who have served with Senator Skinner easily know that she's one of the most well-read individuals on any subject matter. And I also want to highlight the fact that, I always joke with Senator Skinner, and I literally just call her Skinner, that the fact that she was chair of public safety for the amount of years that she was, it's a hard job. And I think people don't really understand that. I'll go through a little bit about what she has worked on. And the one thing that I do want to say about Senator Skinner is the fact that she has genuinely championed a lot of issues that we all think are important. And in a way that's very thoughtful and very considerate of all sides of an argument. And she often has a very honest outlook on what's exactly happening and what needs to happen. It's not just about status quo and holding firm to those values, but it's also saying, okay, where do we need to go? And whether or not this particular issue is moving us forward. And on issues like public safety, an institution, an industry, a situation that largely is not touched by many elected officials, because it's a scary thing to touch. Whether we're talking about it on a local level or even a statewide level, Senator Skinner has pushed the issues that matter to people forward. And the one constant that we can all agree upon is that change is constant. And so nothing can just stay the same. And Senator Skinner knows that better than anybody. And one of the things that I do want to highlight is that Senator Skinner, she is from Berkeley, and she was the first student that went to UC Berkeley that got elected to city council. Okay, so imagine this many years ago. And Senator Skinner knows what it's like to be the new kid on the block. And she's always remembered that, making sure that as she promotes more women being in leadership, as she promotes more women being recognized, in fact, she never votes on any type of situation where they name a bridge, a street, a freeway that's named after a man. She says it's been done before, okay? So she focuses on the issues that she cares about, and as the chair of the Women's Caucus, she prioritized women winning. And more than that, she prioritized progressive women winning. And in fact, she has led the Women's Caucus to be equitable, to be thoughtful, to be more cohesive. And the reality is that when I won my seat and I was running, the entire time, Senator Skinner would call to check in. Hey, have you done this? All you need to do is this. You need to talk to this. And when I finally won, she had a conversation, I won't forget it, and she told me, okay, so here's the lowdown on the Senate. This is what you're gonna have to do. This is the structure. Think of this person as the city manager, this person as the city clerk, this person as that, just to let me know how this institution operates. And she told me, you could piss off anybody you want if you care about the issue, but there's roughly 3 people you don't piss off. And I said, okay, let me write down their names. And she said, you don't piss off Kimberly Rodriguez. Okay? And you don't piss off Bernie. And you don't piss off Secretary Contreras. And I was like, okay, why? And she goes, I'll tell you later. But right now, I just want to make sure that when you come in, you don't piss off these people. But everybody else is free game, okay? And I said, okay, great. And clearly last year, upset a couple people, I think. And, but I didn't upset the people that she mentioned. I was very cognizant of that, right? Because I'm trying to follow Senator Skinner's advice. And anytime you had a tough day, her pep talk is like, yeah, 100%. You are upsetting the right people. You're doing exactly what you need to do. You keep moving forward. And I was always happy to hear from her that she agreed on a lot of the things that I wanted to do or I thought was right. And oftentimes, you guys all know I can't sit still, but when I would sit in my chair, Senator Skinner, who my entire time with her here, she wore a mask, and I'm a little hard of hearing. And I'd make her repeat the same thing like 5 times until she lifted her mask and said, "I said this." And we would debate about, why'd you vote this way? Why'd you vote that way? And it was always a good, robust discussion, always filled with jokes and, you know, just honest humanity. And she would know that sometimes when you would do something that was tough, that it's also hard, right? That sometimes it leads you to being upset. Sometimes you have things going on in your personal life. Sometimes you have things going on that, you know, you're having a bad day. And I think Senator Skinner knows that, and she brings an honest ear, a supportive word, and a lot of just encouragement. And I want to say that Senator Skinner is a brilliant, tough, and thoughtful legislator. If there was a just or righteous cause that needed a legislative solution, you know, she was one of the first people that would lead the change. In California, college athletes have the right to earn money from their name, image, and likeness because of her. She opened up police misconduct records for the first time in 40 years during her tenure. She overhauled California's unjust felony murder rule. And she established the first in the nation gun violence restraining order, otherwise known as red flag laws. And she ensured that college students, K through 12 students, had access to food, the most basic things. And anyone involved in the East Bay knows Senator Skinner. They know she's a principled leader who's always thinking about those who do not have a seat at the table. Her career as an elected official spans 40 years so far: Berkeley City Council, East Bay Regional Park Board, Assembly, and Senate. And when she wasn't an elected official, she was championing climate policy across the nation. Again, I said she's from Berkeley, and she was the ultimate tree hugger. In the gallery now are a number of Senator Skinner's former staff, who just clearly shows, you know, the fact that they're trying to honor her because she has served with them and they respect the work that she's doing. After 40 years of this work, she has also earned a break. And even though I've been pushing her to run for something else, I think her legacy is going to be her pushing more women to run and get elected across this state. In fact, we're on the brink of parity in representation of men and women in the Senate, and Senator Skinner had a huge hand in that. Through her leadership as chair of the Legislative Women's Caucus, as well as her roles encouraging women to run for higher office. And I want to highlight the fact that she was one of the people that supported Congresswoman Barbara Lee to run for office. And the mere fact that she continues to do that and continues to, you know, encourage other women to run clearly shows what she values most, and that is representation. She represents her district wholeheartedly and authentically, and she has continued to hold the door open for everyone else to follow, and making space for many of us to be the woman to help others. So thank you for your service.
Senator Bradford, you may begin.
Thank you, Madam President. Briefly, before I start recognizing Senator Skinner, I just want to apologize for not recognizing my staff and my remarks. I wouldn't be here without my tremendous staff, both current and past, so thank you for all that you've done. Now, it's truly an honor to recognize an amazing colleague, an individual who I consider a friend, someone who I consider a ride or die member of the Senate, and that's none other than Nancy Skinner. I have served longer with Nancy than any member on this floor. We started in the assembly together, but I got there 9 months after and in a special election, and I didn't know up from down. And it was individuals like Nancy Skinner that quickly reached out to me, embraced me, gave me the lay of the land, and we spent many of hours out on the portico just sharing stories. We have a similar background starting in local elected officials, she in the Berkeley City Council, me in Gardena, and we just had honest conversations because that's who Nancy Skinner is. She's a straight talker. It's no, you know, she cuts straight to the chase. What she says, you can go to the bank. And when you talk about a ride or die, you don't have to look over your shoulder to see if Nancy's there, because more than likely she's in front of you doing the blocking and tackling. She's out there advocating for the things that need to be done the most, whether it's yours, your bill, or anyone else's bill. It's not just hers. And I've been honored to co-author 15 bills with Nancy during our time in both the Assembly and in the Senate. And she has co-authored over a dozen of mine as well. And we talked about NIL. It was Nancy who came to me and said, Bradford, let's do this together. She could have easily done this bill by herself, but she valued and understood the importance of collaboration and working together and the importance of diversity. And she shared that spotlight with me and said, let's do this together, because she, again, understood the value of diversity in moving this issue forward. She understood that the majority of these athletes who were not being compensated didn't look like her. They were African-American men. And so I thank her for her trusting in me to join her at the hip on what was a very challenging piece of legislation, a piece of legislation that we got out of this House with not a single no vote. But when we went on summer recess, it was people who were blowing both our phones up trying to get us to hold the bill and not move it further, because it was tremendous pressure from the NC2A to drop the bill. And Nancy and I huddled up, and she laughed and says, no, we're going to keep moving forward, and that's what we did. And so I thank you again for that. And when I think about Nancy, I think of a Jedi warrior, a warrior for justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Whether it's women's rights, minority rights, LGBTQ, the homeless, she is a champion for all of them. I've been honored to serve with her since our time in the Senate on public safety. She was our chair, and after leaving the chair of public safety, she became the budget chair at one of the most difficult times. People say when you're in a deficit, but sometimes the most difficult time when you have a lot of cash and being able to disperse it in a fair and equitable way. Nancy was a great steward of those funds. But again, when you talk about public safety and all that we have done in the state of California, it was because of her courageous leadership. And again, she's not afraid to tackle the issues that mean the most to all Californians, whether it's housing, improving our education system, and criminal justice, as they stated, even the environment. And I just have trusted Nancy so much because, again, she's a straight shooter, but we really bonded over shoes. And I call her Fancy Nancy, but she might not remember. We were on a CFE trip my first year in the Senate, in the Assembly, and we were in Spain, and we were at this exclusive shoe shop, and it was our last day to be in this town, and I saw a pair of shoes from my mother, but unfortunately I had not converted my U.S. money over to the currency there, and I had left my credit card in my room, and the shoe shop was closing that evening. Nancy quickly pulled out her credit card and bought the shoes for my mother, and I appreciate that. And if there's one individual on this floor that has more shoes than me, it's none other than Fancy Nancy. She rocks them like nobody else, whether it's pearls, studs, rhinestones. She has all the shoes for all occasions. She's, again, a fashion icon, in her own style. She's unapologetic for who she is and what she does. But what I also love about Nancy is she's a loving mother, a wife, and a doting grandmother now. And as you saw and heard with her tremendous tribute to her late brother, it just tells you what kind of person she has. She has a heart of gold. She cares about people more than she cares about herself. She has been a tremendous colleague to each and every one of us here. I have no doubt that she will continue to do amazing things because she leads with her heart. She's never one to put her finger in the wind and see which way it's blowing, because her North Star leads to justice at all times. She ignores the headlines, and as Senator Wahab says, she's a excellent listener, but she, again, tells the truth. She's going to tell it like it is. No, straight up, no chaser. She's going to tell you, hey, this makes sense or it doesn't make sense. And I just want to thank you for your friendship, not only to me, but every member in this Senate, regardless of what party you're part of, where you come from. Nancy cares about the state of California. Nancy cares about the people of California, of the United States. And she has been a tremendous leader because she leads with her heart. She's a true public servant. And thank you, Nancy, for your tremendous service to the state of California and this nation.
Senator Skinner.
Yes, I still do wear my mask. I'm one of those people who has a susceptibility and some issues around that, but appreciate your indulging me for it. Thank you, my colleagues who spoke for me. I really, and I love you all there. I love you. Gonna make me cry. I've loved serving in the Senate and the Assembly. It's given me the opportunity to work on all the issues I care most passionately about, coming from that heart. Income inequality, removing barriers for women so we can achieve economic and political equity, which we deserve, restoring fairness to our criminal justice system, reforming our criminal sentences so they're proportionate to the crime that was committed, and advancing California's leadership on clean energy and the climate crisis, and of course, housing, housing, housing. And from the time I was on the Berkeley Council, I tried to use the position that the voters gave me to accomplish policy that could make tangible improvements in people's lives and be a model and a catalyst, both nationally and globally. Always thought about that. I'm very proud that today, people who didn't commit murder in California do not have to serve lifetime sentences for felony murder. They don't. And access to police misconduct records is going to hopefully get us to the place where our communities and our police force, they trust each other. We need that. Without that, we won't have public safety. Our lights stayed on during this heat waves because back in 2010, when I was in the Assembly, my colleagues took the leap of faith when there was no utility-grade battery storage and passed AB 2514, and now California is the world's leader in battery storage. SB 330, the Housing Crisis Act, it enacted the very simple idea that housing applications that play by the rules should not face new obstacles or have to get delayed. So those changes and the many changes all of us made to the ADU laws, that's been the game changer in housing. We're actually building more units, like the one in my backyard. And if you've heard me talk about the student athlete bill, you know that I was inspired by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who I've followed since he was Lou Alcindor playing on UCLA, and he talked about the incredible sums of money that colleges made off the backs of student athletes, primarily, as my colleague from Gardena pointed out, Black student athletes. A message that was reinforced to me then when I was at Cal by Dr. Harry Edwards. But I really couldn't imagine that I'd be able to, or we'd be able to do anything about that. Yet, look what we did. Universal school meals, we did that through the budget. Momnibus, showing, making changes, acknowledging the fact that our Black women and their babies suffer much higher mortality rates. We did that in the budget also. Getting internet retailers to collect sales tax. Imagine what kind of revenue shortfalls we'd have if we didn't have that. The gun violence restraining order, a whole lot more I could go on or on my big top 10 list, but we'll let that go for now. I was especially proud to be part of a very coordinated efforts that many of my women colleagues here and who served with me in the past to increase the number of women in the legislature. And as has been mentioned, we did it. We did it. We started out with only about 20 or so when we got elected, many of us, and now we're at 50. Next year we'll be 58. Pretty soon, we don't want just parity, sorry, apologies, but you know, it's like, women, thank you, yeah. Anyway, I have to thank my incredible staff. And when I say staff, I'm talking all my district staff, my capital staff, my committee staff, both in the Senate and the Assembly. So many of them are here today. Again, I love you all. Thank you for trusting me, for being part of Team Skinner, for making me look good. These accomplishments took all of us, and we were aided by the very best district in the state. Sorry. Expert and active constituents who brought us remarkable policy ideas and always had our backs, always. And I want to thank the Senate staff in all levels, leadership staff, desk staff, the secretary's staff, our sergeants, all of you for the support you've provided us. It's how we get what we do done. And as I've said many times, being in the legislature is a team sport. Thank you, colleagues, for being such good sports, for playing this game fairly, and putting your trust in me when I threw you a fastball. Our constituents want us to be leaders. They want us to be courageous. They want us to be bold, not just following, not just looking at what's popular, but being bold and taking the long view. So please do that. I'm counting on you, and thank you. I love you all.
Thank you so much, Senator Skinner. We love you too.